District. Just visit the grants section of valleyair.org for program details, an application, and a list of all the participating scrap metal dealers in the San Joaquin Valley where you can turn in your old polluting gas mower. Once you've purchased one of the many eligible electric mowers, send in your receipt, application, and verification that you retired your old gas burner, sit back, and wait for your money. That's valleyair.org. Clean green yard machines. This has been your Healthy Air Living Report from the Valley Air District. Please turn off your engine. From the San Joaquin Valley Air District, this is your Healthy Air Living Report. Motor vehicles are responsible for a majority of valley air pollution, and vehicle idling produces a large amount of unnecessary emissions. Consider shutting off your engine, parking, and entering that restaurant or coffee house instead of going through the drive-thru. And when you're waiting to pick up your kids from school, remember the phrase, turn the key and be idle-free. Making these types of changes will help reduce wear and tear on your engine, save you gas, and save you money. Reaching our air quality goals and protecting public health should be a priority, one that can be achieved when we all work together. This has been your Healthy Air Living Report from the San Joaquin Valley Air District.
This is Barbara Berrigan-Perea with Delta Flows, a radio show by the Voice of Stockton and Restore the Delta. This is the weekly radio show where we discuss everything Delta related: the environment, water management, water quality, farming, history and culture, public events, recreation, Delta food, and the arts. Tune into Delta Flows on KXVS, the Voice of Stockton, streaming live on Facebook and YouTube at KXVS Radio.
Do you want to relive the golden days of Stockton? Join Nate Knodt on Stockton Alive every first and third Monday at 6 p.m. Tune into thevoiceofstockton.org.
And I am the Voice of Stockton.
This program does not reflect the views of KXVS management or KXVS, the Voice of Stockton. This is Stockton Alive with your host, Nate Knodt, and here's Nate. Now, not the new UCLA head football coach. He is here currently in studio, not in Westwood. Here's Nate Knodt.
Yeah, I make about, I think it's $2.3 million less per year than the new UCLA football coach.
Yeah, you know, that's a pretty good gig.
My salary's not bad, but it's not in the college coaching football ranks.
Our college coaching period, yeah.
Yeah, college coaching period, that's correct.
I just looked up that story from a couple of years ago. Jeez.
Right.
Or earlier, since August.
That's right. We were discussing that earlier today. So anyway.
Yeah, moving on from money.
Yes. And of course here at KXVS, we're working for the sheer joy of love of radio and promoting our beautiful town, because I don't think I'm paid to work here. In fact, I know I'm not paid to work here.
And if you want to learn more about the Voice of Stockton, go to thevoiceofstockton.org.
That's right. I would do this for free anyway, because we need the Voice of Stockton, and we need Stockton Alive! ! Because we are going to, today, we're actually going to live up to one of the things they promised in the show. Relive the golden days of Stockton. We're going to do that tonight. We're going to do a now and a then. Now, I'm going to explain what I mean by that. Because usually you hear then and now. Mm-hmm. But because I probably got the onset of Alzheimer's already creeping into the folds of my brain where your memory is kept, and since I don't trust myself to remember everything as I'm on the air here, I decided it would be easier to remember what I know is there now and then backtrack. Yeah. But also for our listeners and our vast viewing audience that we inherited, of course, from our earlier show host here, I think it also is easier for the listeners and viewers if I do it that way, because when I mention a place, they'll know exactly what we're talking about if they've been downtown or in other parts of Stockton. Whereas if I started with the historic building and, quote-unquote, brought it forward, I might lose them. Mm-hmm. Their brains will be racking around and trying to figure out what we're talking about, and then when we finally reveal what the current place is, we might have lost them by then. Yep. So, taking a Marco Rubio sip of liquids here.
Marco Rubio.
I didn't blame him for doing that, but it was very hard to talk with a dry throat.
It is.
And our commander-in-chief and our president did virtually the similar thing in a press conference the other day. Mm-hmm. But that's okay. So, anyway, without further ado, we're going to do Now and Then. And we will start downtown.
On Stockton Alive.
On Stockton Alive, yes.
Exclamation.
That's right. And we're going to start, I'll name some current places, and what I'm going to do is do a progression of what they used to be. That could be one thing, it could be two or three. But we'll just do that. And we'll start downtown because our primary purpose generally on Stockton Alive is to talk about downtown, although we certainly are happy to include Hammer Lane, March Lane, West Lane, Harding Way, and all these other places when the time is appropriate. But primarily, we generally focus on downtown.
And do you know this by heart? I just want to ask you this.
Sure.
Came to my question, or heart, mind, same thing.
I'm ready.
How big is Stockton square footage-wise? Like, how many miles is Stockton?
61.9.
Whoa, that's huge.
Or 68.9. You know, I almost brought the World Almanac, too, because amazingly enough, this is
I just wanted to know that one day, how big, like...
The amazing thing is, I almost brought the World Almanac.
Okay.
And one of the things I was thinking of, if I had the World Almanac here, we could talk about the population, ethnicity, income, and the dimensions of Stockton.
Isn't it like almost the population bigger than Cincinnati or something like that?
Yes, we are. We're at 300. The last official count, which was a 2015 revision of the 2010 census, had us at 305,800 something.
Whoa.
I think Stockton's above 310,000 now. And the people that we have passed are Cincinnati and St. Louis, among the bigger cities that are well known.
Which all have major league sports teams.
And we're also we're either breathing down their throat or already past Pittsburgh. I can't remember which. But if I remember right, Stockton is 62nd largest city in the U.S. by population.
Yeah, but not media-wise either.
Right, but of course in California, we're not even that big in California.
I was in the Bay Area last week and in Central Valley this week, and oh my goodness, I'm like, how much traffic's here?
That's right.
Yeah.
So anyway, in order to jog our memory and to compass some ideas, of course I have my usual tools of ignorance here. The pocket protector that says hidden inside my coat so I don't look too nerdy. And of course, being one of the last living persons that actually uses liquid whiteout to make corrections because I'm obsessive compulsive and don't like scribbling.
That's true old broadcasting.
But we also, and I'm not going to show photos from it because I don't want to get KXVS in trouble over copyright fees. We'll work out with the legality of showing photos from a book another time. Now, some books you could. Like, for example, my official Railway Guide of America, there's really no threat I'm going to get a copyright lawsuit on this.
No.
But I do respect a publisher who wrote a good book, and it's all been published professionally and sold in big bookstores and department stores. But I have but I'll show it briefly. I have the Then and Now Stockton book, and this is written by Daniel Kasser and Amanda Zimmerman. It's a terrific book.
Local authors too?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
We need
Stockton residents?
Right. So anyway, there are photos of things as they were and as they are now. However, I brought this primarily as reference and backup because what I did was I started with places that are downtown that we all know, and we're just going to progress backwards.
Yeah.
Now, being a transportation guy, of course, I'm going to start, and having just, of course, taken my wonderful sleeping car Amtrak
How was that?
to Portland.
We never really got to talk about that since Becky was on last show.
Right, and I should probably really save that for our Mega Monster Transportation show that we're going to have that we keep teasing everyone with. But I will say that it was a wonderful trip. I'll be absolutely honest with the vast listening audience.
How many hours did it take?
Well, going north, because of unbelievable, unusual circumstance, and because we intentionally took a circuitous route, which is took a train from Stockton to Martinez, California, where we then had a scheduled 2-hour layover, and then caught the train called the Coast Starlight, which is the long-distance train that goes to Portland. It's actually a Los Angeles-Seattle train.
Ooh.
But anyway, it was right on the dot leaving Emeryville, California, which is one of the Oakland stops. And then there was a police disturbance in the railroad tracks near Richmond.
Ooh, interesting.
It delayed all the train, and everyone was running exactly on time, almost to the minute, like in Europe. And then it all unraveled. We sat in Martinez, and we boarded at 12:30 in the morning or something like that.
Wow. What do you do in Martinez?
Well, that night we stayed in the train station, which is a fairly modern new train station. In fact, on what's called the San Joaquin line of Amtrak, the San Joaquin corridor.
I'm a big fan of. Yeah.
The only station that's not new is Stockton's.
Yeah. Bakersfield's
new or completely remodeled, but yeah. But anyway, so we're okay though. And I had packed snacks for. I always have plans B and C when I'm
prepared.
Traveling. Yeah. But the nice thing was there was a slight benefit to boarding late. They had already turned out the lights, and most people had already gone to bed in what's known as the Pacific Parlor Car, the exclusive lounge car just for sleeping car passengers. The only Amtrak train to have that service. That was a fairly common thing in the Pullman Railway days when a company called Pullman did all the sleeping cars all over the United States.
From Pullman, Washington? I'm joking.
No, it was George M. Pullman, who's named after. But and he has at Pullman, Illinois.
There's a Pullman, Illinois.
It was his company town. Yeah. But anyway, but when you have a nice big lounge car with roof, ceiling, glass and stuff, and the lights are off, you can see out very clearly.
Nice. It's like camping.
Yes.
But moving.
And everyone else had gone to bed to their sleeping car rooms.
Not Nate and Becky.
No, not my. Then I'll say it for the last time because we've renamed her the Peruvian Beauty.
Okay.
She doesn't like Peruvian party wife, but we're going to use it in this case because it's appropriate.
One time only, or final time.
In the sleeping car, you can pack. Let me rephrase that because pack has a connotation. You can put into storage in little suitcases anything you kind of want to take with you. So our sleeping car attendant was nice enough to get us some ice and a pitcher of ice water, and then I supplied the rest, and we had our own private happy hour all the way from Martinez to the departure from Sacramento.
Wow.
That was continuous munching and drinking. We'll call them adult beverages, while looking out at the beautiful scenery from this darkened parlor car all the way from Martinez to past Sacramento. Then we went to bed. And, of course, got up, had a wonderful, huge buffet breakfast in the Pacific parlor car.
Cool.
But we'll save the rest of the trip for another day.
To be continued.
So, right. So, what I was going to mention the Amtrak stations. That's how we got started here anyway.
Is it in now and then?
Yes. So, the Amtrak station that most people are somewhat familiar with, which is on San Joaquin Street. And some people may know it actually has a restored neon sign.
Been there many times.
Right, and it says Santa Fe because that was the Santa Fe station. In fact, that location, just to prove that we're going to go back to the golden days of Stockton, that location was the site of Stockton's first train station, going back to the San Joaquin Valley Railroad of 1858, which then got bought out by the Santa Fe, who bought it to get into the Stockton area to compete with the Southern Pacific, which was then the Central Pacific. But anyway, the current Amtrak station, which has a kind of a mission style to it with the
That's the part I like about it.
It is. It's actually a nice looking station. If you could just really fix it up really nice, and if you could just somehow
make some improvements.
Yeah, and transform the neighborhood a little bit. But anyway, and the sister station, the absolute architectural identical twin, was Fresno's. I say was because Fresno's expanded there.
Yes, they have.
And they also finally remodeled and let Amtrak people back into it because for 40 years you couldn't use the Fresno station.
Wow.
You used a little freight house building down the tracks. But anyway, Fresno's was the identical twin of Stockton's. And anyway, it dates from 1900. It is our oldest train station. The second oldest train station was the Western Pacific station, which sadly had a couple different fires. And ACE has now deemed that they're going to tear down most of it, but attempt to keep a part of the former express and baggage room building and allow that to be a bit of a museum for what was the rest of the building.
I think a railroad museum would be cool in Stockton.
Right, and they still intend, if possible, to have that the staging location for their bus connections or Amtrak bus connections.
I'm campaigning for you, Nate, if we get a railroad museum for Nate Knodt to be the MC and tour guide.
Yeah, be curator.
Yeah, curator.
Yes, curator and docent. Probably for no pay, by the way. Kind of like doing Stockton Alive. But anyway, so Amtrak station is 1900, and it's always been a train station. Now, I should point out that Stockton had a 3-year gap of no passenger rail service. When Amtrak was created on May 1st, 1971.
What's Amtrak stand for again?
Oh, Amtrak is... They call it, there's a couple ways they call
acronym?
it. But one word is, it is not an acronym, actually. It's what they call a sensational spelling.
Okay.
And there's also, it's a font-mondieu. There's a real fancy French word or something. But what it is a merger. It's the shortened merger of a couple different words.
Okay.
American and travel and track.
Oh, interesting.
And if you take out some of the letters and take out, and by sensational spelling, they mean you do it phonetically rather than just, so there's no C in Amtrak. The people always misspell it. They think it's AM and then TRACK. It's actually just AM TRAK. And that same kind of spelling you find on your cereal box, like Kix, Kix instead of KICKS. So Amtrak stands for American and Track, essentially, or American Travel Track. And it was a very famous advertising firm that came up with that. And, of course, originally they had what was called the pointless arrow. Now they have this kind of ocean wave thing, which not all that wild about. But anyway, so Amtrak is American travel and track. So it was the Santa Fe station. Now, the reason for mentioning this, Santa Fe, from about the mid-30s to right up to the day Amtrak took over on May 1st, 1971, was probably the premier passenger railroad in America. Not necessarily the busiest passenger railroad in America. That would be the Pennsylvania Railroad on the East Coast. But the premier passenger railroad. And it had a terrific, beautiful train that was world famous at one time. 20, 30 years ago, anybody would have known what you're talking about. I think we're far enough removed now, people don't know it anymore. But they had a spectacular train called the Super Chief. Chicago to L.A. in 39 3/4 hours. Now, I know that compared to a 3-hour jet plane trip, it doesn't sound very fast. We're talking about covering 2,000 miles in 39 hours. That train was rocking and rolling, but it was famous for being very luxurious, super, super spectacular personal service by the staff, unbelievable dining car with 5-star gourmet, world-famous meals, and they even had a private dining room in a lounge car that was also had a glass dome on top, and it was called the Turquoise Room. And that was the train that all the Hollywood movie stars and the famous people rode, not all of them, but most of them, up until the very late 60s when the jet air thing took over. Even right up to the day it was canceled, there was quite a few famous people who still rode the Super Chief. But that was an LA-Chicago train. I mentioned that because we, in Stockton, had an almost equally great train called the San Francisco Chief. And it was spectacular because of what it could do. You could board in Richmond, or it started in Richmond, California. Well, it started in Oakland originally, but later in Richmond. It was bus connections, and before that, ferry connections to San Francisco. But one of the amazing things about the San Francisco Chief until early 1968 was that you could board in Stockton, and you had a choice of, without changing car. As long as they put you in the correct coach or sleeping car, you could travel all the way to either Chicago or Texas on that train. You had Amarillo, you had Kansas City, you had Newton, Dodge City.
I've been to Amarillo and Kansas City.
You had Lamy, which is near Santa Fe. You had Albuquerque, but you also, again, the train split in half at Clovis, New Mexico.
Basically that I-10, I-40 kind of interstate area.
So you either continued on to Kansas City and Chicago, or you took a right-hand turn and you went on to, from Clovis, you went on to primarily Temple, Texas, but then on to Dallas, Fort Worth and Dallas, or even down to, you could even catch connections down, convenient connections to Houston. Actually, I take that back. There was actually a through car to Houston for many years, both sleeper and coach. So that train out of Stockton, you could board in Stockton and go almost anywhere in Texas or anywhere on the way to Missouri and Illinois on that same train.
Wow.
It had left every day from Stockton and arrived every day, of course. And then Santa Fe also had some wonderful little trains up and down the San Joaquin Valley, which are on the same route as today's San Joaquin's, and they're called the Golden Gates. The Golden Gates were operated until the very, about 68, they took them off, and then all you had was the San Francisco Chief. Now, that takes us to what is now the Ace Robert Cabral Station. Well, that was historically your Southern Pacific station. Southern Pacific Railroad is the successor to the Central Pacific, which is one of your two transcontinental railroads. And of course, we mentioned this on an earlier show, while Promontory, Utah always gets the famous thing as being the home of the last spike ceremony and all that, in May 10th, 1869, when it connected the East and West by rail, the actual complete end or completion of the entire Transcontinental Railroad, when it finally made it actually to Oakland with ferry boats to San Francisco, was right here at Mossdale Y, just not far from where we're at now, where you cross over the water on I-5 going to Tracy. At Mossdale Y, where they actually connected the actual total Transcontinental Railroad. And there's even a little place, there's a little state park down there. If you go down there, or a county park or something, down underneath the old iron truss bridges that have now been replaced by the I-5 overpass, you'll actually go to a little park, and there's actually a plaque that talks about the driving of the final spike of the Transcontinental Railroad in something like July or August of 1869. So, The Ace Cabral Station is part of the Southern Pacific Empire, which used to be, the Southern Pacific used to be the second largest corporation in America at one time. And in California, it dominated business and politics for many years and was called the Octopus because its tentacles reached everywhere. But anyway, we have the beautiful station, and that's the one that's been restored so beautifully by the Ace Commuter Rail folks. And then we also have the Altamont Corridor Express trains operating from there, and our Amtrak trains operating there also that operate between Sacramento and Bakersfield by way of Stockton. Then there's the additional Amtrak trains which come out of the Santa Fe station, which we just talked about. And I started to mention, never quite finished it. We had 3 years with no passenger rail. From May 1st, 1971 until March of 1974, when the first San Joaquin train was inaugurated, we had no passenger rail service. But Stockton's in pretty good shape on that now, because we have the Amtrak train. We have 14 arrivals and departures daily with the San Joaquin Amtrak trains, and we have the 8 arrivals and departures daily of the 4 round trips of the Ace commuter train. Okay, but anyways, and then the Western Pacific Station was the mission style, another separate, different styling, but also mission style, was the Western Pacific Station, which sadly has mostly burned out, and they're trying to restore a portion of it, which we talked about. Okay, now we'll move, sticking with transportation, we'll move to Greyhound. I'm not sure what used to be where the Greyhound station is today. Right now, of course, it's at the intersection of the Crosstown Freeway and Center Street. But I can tell you where the Greyhound station used to be before that one. That one, in case you're wondering, opened in 1972 as a brand new, beautiful, well, somewhat beautiful station. There used to be about 80-something trips a day through there. Now there's 16. And there's a lot more to that story that we're going to talk about when we have our transportation special. But the Greyhound station, the one that's out there today, that's almost a ghost town, it's only open 8 hours a day in different shifts throughout the day. It's actually closed 16 hours a day. But that station once had a restaurant or cafe, a snack bar, a gift shop, a travel office, a very busy package express baggage room, and a lounge. They actually had a real lounge there, with adult beverages. That's how busy that place once was. So, but where Greyhound used to be is a just recently closed Chinese restaurant downtown. It was called the Gan Chai. And that's an Art Deco looking building at the corner of Sutter and Washington. And across the street from that is the historic Henry Apartments. The local guy named Greg Thompson bought from the city of Stockton for $24,999 and has been restoring one room at a time.
I've been there before.
And have you been in it since he's been restoring it?
No, I've been by it. But
okay, because Greg Thompson actually managed to get one major room off of the main lobby done, and Michael Fitzgerald, the record columnist, actually went there and praised how good that particular room is. I think since then he's about tripled the amount of work he's done. He wants to get the ground floor done to a point where he could actually put some revenue businesses in there and then start working his way up the floors. I think it's 6 stories tall, if I remember right. But it used to be an incredibly fancy hotel at one time, and then later a really spectacular urban apartment building, the kind that would have a doorman and all that stuff. And then, of course, it evolved over many years into a tenement building, and now it's been sitting there decaying. I believe he stabilized the roof and stopped the roof leaks and all that, which is always the first thing you have to do with an old building, is you have to work on the, usually a combination of the roof and the foundation to make sure the building is still, sound and safe. But so Greyhound, though, used to be where this Gan Chai restaurant was, and the buses used to drive through a covered driveway behind the back of it. It was very similar in operation to what the old Sacramento Greyhound station in Sacramento looked like at 7th and L Streets. And it had some resemblance also to stations in Fresno and Bakersfield. But anyway, but the Gan Chai just recently closed. It had some great food there, and it was been in business for, I guess almost since Greyhound left. Greyhound left there in 1972, of course, and there's been a restaurant there almost ever since. Now the next building we'll talk about, and this will be our final transportation building for now, is the Downtown Transit Center for the Regional Transit District. What is now our Downtown Transit Center, they saved 3 of the 5 historic facades. Among other things that used to be in there was the Wilhoit building. Yes, the family of Doug Wilhoit, the current president of the Chamber of Commerce, who used to be a county supervisor, who I think was once a county sheriff, if I remember right. I know he was in law enforcement. They used to have a big store there, which I believe, if I remember right, was a furniture store, and later that turned into a carpeting store. Later, a store that sold paints, and then it was empty for let's see. We broke ground and started rebuilding that in October 2003. Completed it in January of 2007. When they did some of the digging for the foundation to redo some of the foundation things, by the way, they found the remains of a sailing ship, and they also found a redwood storage tank for petroleum or something, which delayed construction for a while. Whenever you find something like that, they got to stop, bring the archaeologists out, and start digging through it, of course. But anyway, so so we have a historic Stockton family that used to have a very historic business located there. There was also, and I'm not doing advertisements here, but if you ever had your shoes repaired at Cavaliero's in Lincoln Center, which probably overall is the preeminent shoe repair store in Stockton, although we have a fine one here on the Miracle Mile also. But if you've ever been to Cavaliero's, their original home was in the Valley Shoe Service Art Deco shoe repair shop in the ground floor of what is now the Downtown Transit Center. So you have the historic Wilhoit business there, and you have the historic shoe repair shop that is now known as Cavaliero's on the Miracle Mile. In Lincoln Center by Ben Holt. And it's now third generation of family shoe repairing. Okay, so we covered. I should mention Stockton Airport too, because I'm actually old enough to remember the previous Stockton Airport. The current Stockton Airport was quite the deal when it was built. It was constructed in '64 and opened in '65. That was before what was known as airline deregulation. Airlines used to be regulated as to where they could fly and what they did. And this is a shock to people to always hear this now, many years later. But in the 60s and into the early 70s, Stockton was served by three major airlines with jet planes. United, PSA. PSA stood for Pacific Southwest Airlines, which later got bought out by United, which became known as the Shuttle by United. And I don't think that term exists anymore. It was supposed to drive with a Wankel turbine engine. Wound up having to put a major regular engine, which didn't fit and had all kinds of problems. But it did sell great for 1 year. But anyway, the old Stockton Airport, what I was leading up to, was a Quonset hut before your current Metropolitan Airport, which to this day is a pretty nice building. And if they get customs office built there, they'll have flights to Mexico. It'll become an international airport and actually become fairly busy. Right now, in case you're wondering, they got about 7. I think they average 6 or 7 flights a week. That doesn't mean 1 flight a day. There's some days they have 2 flights or 2 departures and arrival, and maybe one day when they don't have a flight. They fly to 3 different places now, which is Phoenix, Long Beach, and I forgot where else. But anyway, back in 1963, the whole Stockton Airport was a Quonset hut. Even though they had some pretty major airlines flying with propeller planes in 1963, like DC-3s and DC-6s, and probably Electras, I believe, which are all turboprop planes. Do you know what a Quonset hut is?
No, actually, I don't want to.
I was going to say, because that used to be very common. Everybody knew what it was until about 20 years ago. Quonset huts were an inspiration of cheap, quick building by your military during World War II. And there's an example of a Quonset hut. An actual, real honest to goodness, probably Army surplus when they bought it, or it might have been there might have been architectural copies made. But if you go up and down El Dorado, actually directly over by Churchill, which is not far from here, a Quonset hut is a building that's completely. It's usually made of metal, corrugated, wrinkled. I'm going to use wrinkled for lack of a better term, sheet metal, and it's curved completely from one side to the other, making almost a perfect half circle above the ground. And they're extremely cheap and easy to build. And so they use those Quonset huts. I don't know what the term Quonset stands for. It's Quonset, by the way. Quonset hut. But they were ubiquitous in the United States after World War II and the Korean War. They were everywhere because they were just built like crazy. And then when the Army did, and they could be moved. They could be picked up and moved. So the Army sold them as surplus already made fabricated buildings. And they were everywhere. But about the last 20, 30 years, they've kind of disappeared. Because, if you ever thought about it, without some pretty spectacular insulation, think about the temperature you'd have inside a Quonset hut when it's corrugated iron or metal or steel with almost no insulation. And you have the sun beating down on it in the winter, the summer, and Jack Frost coming in, attacking it, mist and fog and tule fog and everything, hitting it in the winter time. They were not the best buildings for AC or HVAC. Okay, so the Stockton Airport went from a Quonset hut to what you see out there now, which is a fairly nice terminal, even though it's relatively small. Okay. Then this is an obvious one, been talked about a million times. I'm not going to say too much about it, but the courthouse now sits on what used to be Hunter Square. Hunter Square was deeded to the city of Stockton by our founder, Charles M. Weber, with the expressed purpose that there would be a public park at that site. and I forgot why it's named Hunter Square, but anyway, Hunter Square is where they built the new courthouse. But the old courthouse hasn't gone away yet. By the way, this officially is courthouse number 4, the big one we have now, the big beautiful one with the I haven't been on jury duty yet. But the jury duty is on the 12th floor. I understand they have a spectacular waiting room, and you have a beautiful outdoor pavilion. And they say the best views of Stockton and the San Joaquin Valley are from the 12th floor of our new courthouse building. Courthouse number 3 was the somewhat rectangular square, kind of brutal architecture with only windows on one side. That is the former but recent current courthouse that was so castigated as when they built that, it was the beginning of the end of downtown Stockton, according to a lot of people. Now, courthouse number 2 was torn down in 1962 to make way for the previous courthouse, which opened in 1964. Courthouse number 2 is a mini version of the California State Capitol building. So that was a spectacular, beautiful courthouse. But at the time, they felt they'd outgrown it, which they had, in truthfulness. But if you go to a lot of valley towns, Woodland would be an example, and I forget a couple others like it. Most cities didn't, and Visalia, I think, is true, and maybe Hanford. In a lot of cities, they didn't tear down the old courthouse. They usually turned them into a museum or visitor center and built a new one next to it. But no, here they tore down the old one and put the monstrosity up there that we have now that was just recently replaced by the beautiful building, but which has not gone away yet. Now, you know how Michael Fitzgerald describes the courthouse number 3. He says it's inflicting visual damage on downtown Stockton. That's an interesting term. That's like Bob Stevens when he said that a line drive hitting Candlestick Park could be a wind-tortured line drive. That's always one of my favorite terms. And he blasted a wind-tortured line drive to left field that the left field had trouble picking up. Okay. Now we'll move into another historic building. Have you ever been to Mr. D's Pizza? What is now called Mr. D's Pizza.
What street is that on again?
That's a little building that used to be in the middle, surrounded by nothing. Now it's got a bank and a paved parking lot. Kind of diagonally across the street from the Chavez Library. It's kind of a pizza out.
I know what you're talking about.
That's the second. I could be off by 1 or 2, but I think it's the second oldest existing building structure in Stockton, at least commercially. That was the steam engine room of the building that there used to be on that whole site, which is now mostly empty, except for the bank and the parking lot. Used to be a big leather tanning company there, and I forgot the name of the tannery. But that was the engine room. That was like where the steam engine was, wherever it ran the electricity or did whatever they did with the building. Now, you've probably noticed, without paying much attention to it, the Pacific Storage building that is behind that parking lot. It's a downtown building for storage. That used to be part of the tannery, that building. So you have what was the engine room, which is now the Mr. D's Pizza, and you have the Pacific Storage Company, used to be all part of this huge leather tanning business. One of the greatest ironies of this business, you're thinking, well, why don't we have that leather tanning business anymore? Believe it or not, and this happened in the mid-20s, as in the 1920s, as in 90-plus years ago, they got knocked out of business by cheap leather imports from Asia. How familiar does that sound? Now, the other thing to remember, I'm sure you already know this, why was it built there, you would say? Because the water used to go up to El Dorado Street. What is now the Martin Luther King Park and the Cesar Chavez Library used to be a much larger version of McLeod Lake. And the water used to come right up to El Dorado. Just like the water used to go right up to the Hotel Stockton. And so actually, they believe it or not, that tannery was located there because ocean sailing ships used to come in what is now the Deepwater Channel and actually unload the hides right there on El Dorado Street, right there at the tannery. In case you're wondering, that water was filled in. I think they filled that in the late 40s. And actually, by the time they did that, they said that it was considered a big civic improvement because I guess the water was a bit stagnant and you had a lot of mosquitoes there at that time. A lot of times, water has been filled in for land because of perceived health reasons, and to some extent, that's true. Now, to go to another downtown building, if you think of the Sutter Street side of the current county administration building, by the way, that's where Impresso Coffee Shop is now,
yes,
right? Mm-hmm. In that same building, and where exactly where that building was, used to be the huge multi-story office building that housed the once incredibly famous Yosemite Theater. And Yosemite Theater lasted into the 1920s, I believe. It opened up in the late 19th century. By the way, have you ever noticed when you're downtown Stockton that there's 3 open-air parking lots that are in a direct line that go through 4 city blocks?
Yeah.
Either 3 or all 4 of those parking lots used to be theaters. That's what was there. What happened was, as theaters started to go out of business in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, the expedient thing to do was, let's tear it down and put it in parking. So those open-air parking lots in the middle of downtown Stockton all used to be movie theaters. At one time, there were 7 movie theaters in a 4-block area of downtown Stockton. Imagine how many bright lights that was, and people on the sidewalks, and the activity that created. Of course, the last of those theaters that's left out of that would be which theater?
Fox.
That's right. The Fox, or sometimes known as Bob Hope Theater, was the only one to survive as a movie theater long enough to where it then got saved as a live entertainment venue, long enough for the city of Stockton eventually to buy it and restore it. And it's, of course, they still show classic movies there once a month, but the rest of the time it's live performances. In fact, that Irish dance thing is coming to Stockton here very shortly.
Interesting.
Yeah, so, and then of course we've had the Russian Ballet Company there several times. Had the Nutcracker Suite, and we've had George Lopez, the comedian.
Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah, and he opened it, by the way. After they rebuilt it, he was the opening act. They actually set up fancy dinner tables outside on the street in front of the Bob Hope, and had a catered dinner there. This is October 2003, I believe, or 2004, and then after the fancy dinner, Seinfeld did one of his stand-up acts there. And then they brought him back for the 10th anniversary, for anyone who doesn't remember that.
Yeah, a couple years ago.
Yeah,
the real question is, though, did he get Neil Diamond money? Nate gets that joke.
Perfect segue.
Right?
Because I was headed for the Stockton Arena. No, it's very popular for people to criticize the city of Stockton for having helped fund the Stockton Arena and the Stockton Ballpark.
I'm a bit, when it comes to arenas in California, I already know this, and I follow sports a little bit. You're never going to get publicly funded money anymore. Sacramento might be the last place that ever gets this in the state of California.
And the Golden One was built with quite a bit of private money.
Yes, it was also, but still a large. Kevin Johnson gave a fair favor.
You get seed money, you get infrastructure usually,
And San Diego wouldn't do that. That's why the Chargers are no longer there. So Sacramento might be the last place that gets publicly funded some of the money to a public sporting event venue.
Right. Well, the reason people don't want to fund those things is because billionaires own the teams, and the players are practically becoming billionaires. Yeah. And you mentioned the money coaches make, so it hurts to subsidize something that's essentially operated by, and used for people who are millionaires and billionaires. So I still
think, though, that you get money coming into the.
Well, I was just going to say, and this is what I was leading up to.
Yeah.
Because I want to remind people what was there. It's been this popular thing that these things bankrupted Stockton. First of all, from a purely financial standpoint, no, the arena and the ballpark did not bankrupt the city of Stockton. Yes, it contributed to debt payments, which was an incremental part of our bankruptcy, but it wasn't the fundamental part of it.
And I think they needed that to make downtown better, which it's getting
exactly.
better.
So in other words, I defend it too.
Yeah.
So, and I'll tell you why I defend it.
Best minor league ballpark in California.
That's right. What was sitting there before, I'm speaking of the arena and the ballpark, what was sitting there before we built those things was an empty Chase Chevrolet body and paint shop. Nothing wrong with that, because the building was well run when it was there.
Yes.
Chase Chevrolet happened to move to Hammer Lane, to the outskirts of the auto mall.
Yeah, where the auto malls are.
And then there was a machine manufacturing fabrication plant that sat. Now the building that was the Chase Chevrolet building was about where the actual ball field is now. where the University Hotel was a machine fabrication plant that had been out of business for 10 or 15 years. The Chase Chevrolet building was vacated in 1994, and the ballpark broke ground in 2004, so that was empty for 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years.
And then, almost nobody remembers this, but one of Stockton's first, only modern skyscrapers, really. Let me correct that. We have the 2 waterfront towers where the city is now going to put City Hall in one of them, which is next to the waterfront warehouse, which we're coming to. But where the parking lot is for the Stockton Banner Island Ballpark used to be this pathetic building called the Marina Towers. The Marina Towers were built about 1978 or 9, and were for a while the entire home of American Savings, which used to be, amazingly enough, and no one's heard of it anymore, but I'll describe what it was. American Savings, in the early 1980s, the largest savings and loan corporation in the United States, and it was headquartered in Stockton, California. Later, it moved into the Court Tower, what is now known as the Court Tower. But while they were they moved in after Bank of America moved out, and where there was some remodeling and stuff that went on. For the time that went on, American Savings headquartered in this thing called the Marina Towers. The only tenant it ever had was the interim tenancy of the American Savings. So the building was occupied for 4 or 5 or 6 years and was then empty for more than 20. And over time, it was all glass. It was one of these kind of modern, ugly buildings. It was mostly glass on the outside. Over the time it sat empty, all the glass got broken by vandals. It's amazing the building never burned down, but all the vandals lived there and homeless people lived there, and they broke all the windows out. So they put plywood up where the windows used to be. Imagine an 8-story building that's mostly plywood. And they beautified it.
That's an eyesore.
They painted the plywood beige. So we had beige there.
Still a little eyesore.
It was an incredible eyesore. And guess what it was visible from?
Where?
I-5. Everybody that drove through Stockton for 20 years saw the Marina Tower sitting there in such pathetic, awful, just getting worse and worse by the day.
And if you look at studies about this, if you build a great downtown, people will come no matter where, no matter what. Look at downtown Los Angeles, what they did with LA Live and the Staples Center in the late 90s. That used to be not an area people like to go to. Now it's packed every night.
I know that area completely.
Yeah, Figueroa Street.
Yeah, Olympic Figueroa, the original.
Same with downtown Denver.
Yep,
I saw
that too.
That was a big eyesore. So those kind of if you build a downtown and you build a good arena and a ballpark or whatever. People will come and spend money, and I still think Stockton needs a nightlife, so maybe that's next where downtown can take that up, and it already has a great art movement downtown, and I just think that if you build a great downtown, people will tend to...
No, absolutely.
And I still think they put a CSU Stockton in Stockton, it maybe should have a downtown campus.
We absolutely should have that, yes. So, what happened there then, you just hit it on the nail. We had... an empty Chase Chevrolet building. We had an empty machine fabrication shop, a bunch of ugly, muddy, empty, worn out, tired, mostly asphalt, broken up parking lots around those buildings, and nothing else. Now we have the minor league stadium, the Stockton Arena, and the University Waterfront Hotel. Now, what I always have to remind people about the University Waterfront Hotel, because no one seems to get this, yes, the city of Stockton pretty much subsidized the building of the ballpark and the arena. But they attracted the University Hotel.
Which is nice, actually.
Yeah, it is very nice. And I've had my wife and I spent our 25th wedding anniversary there. In one of the big suites, by the way.
Oh, nice.
So having said that...
Great views, too, there.
The University Hotel was built almost exclusively with private money. When it was built, and this is 2005 and 6, 2004 and 5, it cost $60 million. Woo. And... all the city did in terms of any subsidy towards the University Waterfront Hotel was to build some infrastructure around it and spend, I think, $600,000 or $700,000 on infrastructure so it could be there. But we wouldn't have the university, which is a pretty nice thing to look at, too.
It still looks young. It doesn't look old at all.
And now, of course, it houses Pacific graduate students in the upper 3 floors, along with some regular citizens who bought what are now kind of like condominiums. The hotel, by the way, is doing pretty well now in terms of occupancy.
Yeah.
But the first 4 floors are hotel. Top 3 floors are private living in something like European-style condos.
Yes.
Having said all
Lofts,
that,
kind of.
that was attracted. That private investment that built that, and still privately owned, was attracted by the building of the arena and the ballpark. Okay, so that leads us down. I was going to talk about that anyway. So now we can talk about what's next to all that.
4 more minutes, by the way, Nate.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're right on target.
Okay.
On the other side of on the river, what we might call the south side of the Deepwater Channel.
The Deepwater
Our
Channel.
inland port that I like to mention. I can count on my 2 hands how many inland ports exist in the world, and we have one of them. That we have, of course, the Waterfront Warehouse, which is the last building left of the once sprawling Sperry Flour Company and many other food processing type companies that used to board things, mixed building supplies and mixed food processing, and wheat and other commodities onto riverboats, and then that was all replaced by our Deepwater Channel. And so anyway, that's what the Waterfront Warehouse used to be. Of course, now it's mostly restaurants and a handful of businesses in the Chamber of Commerce. It was intended to be a kind of an upscale shopping center when it was built, but that never really caught on.
It kind of has that feel when you go drive by it.
And unfortunately, retail just never really worked there. No. And it became offices, but offices have never thrived there either.
It's like it's in the middle of nowhere kind of, too.
Yeah, so. It is now, unfortunately, yes. So that takes us to the county, the new county administration building, with what I like to call the green iceberg on the front.
I actually like that view.
I do too.
I like that.
I'm the only one that you are the only ones that like it.
It makes it stand out.
It is
be original. And
then the building itself, you look real carefully, it has a nautical theme.
It's kind of like cubed or a little bit like
Right. It looks a little bit like the sides of a ocean liner if you look at some of the sides.
And you when you drive downtown or go downtown, you're like, what's that? And we're like, just the county building.
Right. And then in front of the green iceberg window covering of the atrium lobby is actually a very clever thing that doubles as both a sail and a plow. And on one side is water, and on the other side is dirt. I have to admit, that's one of the more clever things I've seen done by an artist, where they're trying to have a theme. Now, in that building was Quinn's stationery store, a place up at one time, the second floor, which was a big-time downtown, called the Palomar Club, big downtown dancing nightclub place. Downtown used to have 4 or 5 upstairs, really upscale dancing lounges, pubs, live music places. Now we're getting back to the fact that the Bella Vista restaurant located in Hotel Stockton is starting to use the patio area. I think you can get lunch up there every day now, or most days. That brings us to the Bank of Stockton, the current one, which my second guest, Jasmine Leake, we talked about the architecture of buildings and buildings. We mentioned then that's the brutalesque, or whatever it's called, architecture, where buildings were actually truly designed to be like fortresses because they were scared of terrorism and protests and bombings in those days.
Yeah, Jasmine Leake, who has a show here on KXVS.
Oh, that's right.
Word of mouth.
She does, yes. She's
Sunday part of nights, 7 p.m.
Yes, that Jasmine Leake.
Last night she had a show also.
Yes.
And this upcoming Sunday she has a show.
And I saw her at work today at RTD. So anyway, that Bank of Stockton, but Bank of Stockton used to be in what is now the Court Tower. Go the other way, the Court Tower used to be the Bank of Stockton. However, in between all that was American Savings, which we already talked about. And in an amazing coincidence, we covered every single thing on our sheet and not a single thing more.
Wow, Nate.
We could fill 2 more shows with this easily.
Nate. Yeah. Because
we got all of North Stockton, Charter Way, and Hammer Lane, and all that we didn't even talk about. Like when West Lane used to be a little dusty 2-lane road with the West Lane drive-in theater, and Hammer Lane had a drive-in theater. So we got all that we can go to another day.
Yep. So you know what, Nate? Before we go real quick, speaking of sports real quick.
We always do.
There was a fight in the NFL yesterday. Michael Crabtree and Akeem Talib both suspended 2 games of your Raiders and Broncos fans. So there's that. And, well, this is, Nate, before we go, happy belated Thanksgiving to you and Becky.
Oh, thank you.
How was yours, Thanksgiving?
It was wonderful.
Yeah?
We actually went to a house of my niece's who's with the University of the Pacific, and she'll be a guest, one of our next guests.
What, Nate? Well, Nate has the guests coming in right here on KXVS, the voice of Stockton. Thank you for tuning in to Stockton Alive with your host, Nate Knodt. Until next time, this has been Stockton Alive. Good night from the voice of Stockton Studios on the Miracle Mile.